Hello and welcome. It's been a while. In this Mental Health Awareness Month, we would want to focus on something that is so alive with us, and that is the elections. And we would want to engage us on election anticipatory anxiety or election uncertainty. When we talk about anxiety, this is just basically the fear of the unknown, just like we would normally have anxiety during examinations or anxiety of going to speak in public because probably we are fearing the worst may happen or will not do very well. Even during this time in Kenya, we are all facing election anticipatory anxiety because we are anticipating something that we're not very clear what the outcome will be. And when we talk about anxiety, anxiety is healthy in certain ways, especially when it gets us going, when it gets us thinking of the solution to the problems, when it keeps us awake to have more energy to work and do the things that we need to do. But when it gets us to be paralyzed and not to know what to do, and to get agitated and aggressive and irritable and really totally just wanting to avoid the whole situation, for example, even not wanting to sit an examination because you're telling yourself you will fail. That is then unhealthy anxiety. So when we talk about election anticipatory anxiety, there are a few things that I want to engage us that will really exacerbate or trigger the anxiety that the whole nation today is going through. One of them is the past experiences, the history of elections in this country, where they've been marred with violence, bloodshed, and very clear or polarizing political positions. And where again we have had people lose their property or people getting displaced from their homes. And during elections, every time there are reminders of these things, and this can trigger a lot of anxiety. And these are things that would really ask our politicians to be careful about. Another thing that happens during elections is our leaders, the positions they take, the narratives they use, the narratives they keep, that we are actually seeing every day in our media, in our social media, and where they take positions of not really about policies and not being sometimes about the nation indeed, but about one another. Forgetting that election is a competition, but it's not about them and about individuals, it's really about the country. So there are promises of savior attitudes, or where people are left with a savior mentality, where they think when this person arises to position of power, they'll change my life. From 10th of August, my life will be different. And this is not so. So some of these things cause a lot of anxiety. The other thing that may trigger anxiety is the media and the social media as well, because it is all awash with a lot of negative news, the narratives that our politicians are keeping, the words they're using. Sometimes they're not very nice. And also the fact that this is a time that Kenyans are reminded that they belong to certain tribes. And we find that during elections, the leaders come and remind us where we come from and who we are, for the sake of their own good, for the sake of making us identify with them. And if you're of identifying with a politician, sometimes this is wrong, because this will cause you anxiety and keep you in the fantasy world, which we call fantasy thinking. And you're thinking when they rise to position of power, your life will be different. So the social media and our media probably is also triggering a lot of anxiety for everyone, because all we are hearing is not the good that is happening in the country. All we are so alive to is who insulted who said who joined which party is likely to win. And that is causing a lot of anxiety to everyone. And this is how then you know that you're triggered, that you're having unhealthy anxiety. If you are getting to argue with your neighbor, with your partner, because it is normal for couples or even for individuals in a home to belong to different parties. And you find yourself arguing, or you find yourself getting aggressive, you find yourself getting angry, And you find yourself even wanting to, probably even for those who are very violent, hit someone. And even after that, wanting to cope negatively because of what you're going through. And some people have actually reported having disturbed sleep. The majority of people who are not watching news because they know it triggers them negatively. There are people who would want to hit their TV screens when they see what is happening and what the leaders are saying. This is quite anxiety provoking. And it is important that we have these engagements in all our institutions, in the religious settings, in our churches, in our workplaces, so that we can try and help our populace. We can try and help everyone to deal with this anxiety so that come 9 August, and even after that, that we'll be able to transition better, transition in a healthy way, so that we are safer and we are happier in the country. The election anticipatory anxiety is actually triggered also by error thinking. And one of them is what we call all or nothing thinking, or black or white, where there are no gray areas. So you find that people take positions. I belong to this party and the other one is in this party, and we are seeing them as 100%. There are no gray areas in between. We don't want to hear anything negative about your leader or about your party. And that is really all or nothing, because none of them is really 100%. As a population, what really we need to be thinking about is people who can contribute to the overall growth of the country. And also, what is the lesser evil? You know, what would be more advantageous? What are these people that we are looking at? In all aspects where our country has been ailing from corruption, from bad leadership sometimes, and from people aligning themselves in tribal groups. What would be the lesser evil? Which group presents a better outfit, but also not expecting 100%? Another error thinking is what we call fortune telling, where we are thinking of the worst happening. And this really paralyzes people, because they actually play avoidance. You don't even want to think that you're going to queue to vote or to be part of this election. Some people are even planning how to get out of the country and come back when things are settled, because you're thinking, you're catastrophizing, you're thinking of the worst happening. Another error thinking is what we call magnification, where you magnify these things, and it's because you are so all the time following the negative news in our media, on social media all the time. When you're engaging other people, even at your workplace or in your business place, constantly people are just whispering and talking about the elections and the leaders. And we have less time for ourselves and our businesses and for our children and for our families and God as well, as we do all this. Even mental filter, where you're not seeing anything positive about everyone and you're just seeing the negatives, and also disqualifying the positives, that you're not seeing like there's anything good that is happening in this country. And sometimes it's also important to check, because we may be a population that complains a lot. It is good sometimes, because we become a global village. Let's check what happens in other countries in an African setting and see how those countries are, so that we can also count our blessings and not just disqualify the positives. Sleep is also a major issue. And especially during this time, anxiety is known to trigger sleep issues, where people will not be sleeping very well. So you wake up in the middle of the night, or you only sleep for 3 hours, because your mind is racing with thoughts about the fear of what will happen after 9 and what will happen to the family. Because when our leaders come and want us to over-identify with them, when they come and sell or peddle to us false narratives and false hope, and maybe even give us a few coins to be able to buy ourselves a meal or to have fare, and then we elect them based on that, you have sold the future for your children and your generation. So how are we contributing before we blame our leaders? Why are we listening to them without being objective and weighing what they're saying, weighing their character, checking them correctly and objectively to be able to say yes? This one, I agree with them based on what they are and based on what I think they are saying, and their character as well, their past performances. Maybe we can go for them. So we don't just blame, let's also check ourselves. So that's an error thinking, because we are all participants in this whole issue. Besides voting, that we could also, as a religious country, as spiritual people, that we could be praying for these elections. So the thinking that you're keeping, the conversations that you're keeping, will also exacerbate your anxiety. Remember, anxiety is contagious. So if you're surrounding yourself with anxious people, you will remain anxious. If you're constantly seeking anxiety-provoking information, you will remain anxious. If you're constantly also just wanting to hear the negative things, to hear the leaders who are just about insulting one another sometimes, you're also going to remain anxious. Is it worth it? It is important that we know how we are responding to what we are receiving, to the stimulus from the environment. Whether it's the news, whether it's our friends, whether it's our family members, so that we can see what's happening with us. Check with yourself, what are you going through emotionally? How is your sleep? How is your appetite? How is your motivation to work? Go to work. How is your motivation to pray? If you're a spiritual person, how is your motivation to socialize? If all these things are changing and in a negative way, then we need to be cautious and probably do a little bit more self-care. If you find that all these things we mentioned are changing for you, and you are being drawn towards negative coping mechanisms such as just wanting to sleep, not to go to work, comfort eating, use of more alcohol or substances, and even getting aggressive and not wanting to engage with people, isolate yourself, it is important that you listen to our next clip, where we'll be talking about self-care, where we'll be talking about dealing in a healthy way with the election anticipatory anxiety. It is affecting all of us, from the young to the old. We better prevent anxiety, depression, and all these other things with awareness. So thank you for watching and listening. Look forward to seeing you in our next episode.